have to think back now 50 years. I went into labor on October 27th, 1962. And that was the very weekend that the Cuban Missile Crisis came to a head. I thought the world was going to blow up because we were going to go to war with Cuba. And I said, why am I having a new baby? I already had 2 babies. Do I need a 3rd baby to be blown up in an atomic catastrophe? And I was terribly upset. I was part of a group of people who were very politically aware. And we would talk about the news of the day all the time. But this was big news even for people who were not politically aware. Everybody was worried about Cuba. Just like today, everybody's worried about Korea. If they never read a newspaper, they would know now Korea is shooting off missiles. Right. So you don't have to be so politically aware when there's a big crisis like that. Mm-hmm. The world was on a very, very precipice that we thought we would never survive. I had the radio going while I was in labor. It was a terribly stressful time. And I don't know if I was more worried about my labor or what I was listening to on the radio. But thankfully, the day she was born was the end of the crisis. And everything turned out fine. My baby was healthy and the war was averted. This was the days of Jack Kennedy, and thanks to John F. Kennedy, we did avert the crisis. 21 years passed. My baby was now graduating from Hamilton College. And I went to the graduation upstate New York and sat beside a very pleasant woman named Georgina.
I was very, very pregnant. She was a big baby. She was a British baby. And it was a matter of almost life and death. I was afraid to go to the hospital because you could not be in the streets after 10 o'clock. They would shoot at you. I was very, very, very scared. And it was a very difficult delivery. I almost died. We knew that something was going on because at night we heard the heavy noise from the airport. We live in the road to the airport of heavy equipment, missiles, things. Nobody dared to open the window to look, put a light. People were very, very scared. You put a light to look what's going on, but the noise was something impossible. And some people used to listen to the radio in America, like we did, and we found out that was what was going on. So Alicia, my goodness, birthday was 2 days before her birth. We were lucky that the war was averted because it was really bad. That was it. The nightmare was gone. Alicia, they are very good friends. I really, they live together in New York.
I'm Janet Kalish. I was born in New York City on October 28th, 1962.
I'm Alicia Rodriguez. I was born in October 29, 1962 in Santiago de Cuba in Cuba.
I was at Hamilton College, and I think when we were sophomores, I lived in the Spanish house, and so did Alicia.
We were buddies for a long time afterwards, and I would go home with Janet sometimes for breaks.
And I would go home with Alicia sometimes. Alicia and I, at some point in our friendship, realized that we practically shared a birthday. It was part of our growing up that there was a sense that we're not really free and clear, that there are some chances of nuclear war, and that there's an instability. And
I always heard the stories from my parents and my mom saying that during that time, because of the what was going on with the missile crisis, there was so much tension in the air, and actually in Santiago itself, warheads would be, paraded around, and they were getting ready for an all-out nuclear war. But so then my mom was very tense. So it could be too that the difficulties that she was having had also to do with the tension that was going on at the time. But that was always a story that ever since I could remember, what was always told to me, of course, because of the significance of being born at the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I'm a little bit sensitive to the potential of war that I think I would sometimes think about and wonder if we're going to all be blown up.
I became very involved in the the nuclear freeze movement after Hamilton and shortly after Hamilton, and then when I came here to Illinois. So in some way, I've always had this concern about nuclear war, and I still to this day. Yeah.
I think that a lot of people all the time live in great anxiety all over the world, that there are people right now who are in war and in stressful situations where their stability is unsure, and there are people who are wondering if they're going to live another day.
Last week, my daughter, who's 13, she it was during a lot of the media on what's going on in North Korea and then North Korea's threats of a nuclear attack, and she woke up in the middle of the night scared and wanted, that there was actually going to be an attack, and I had to calm her down and tell her no, it's not going to happen. But while I was saying that, I was thinking, yeah, just what Shannon said, it's definitely possible.
I think that was an interesting meeting for our mothers to meet, and that you and I, while we're graduating, our mothers are sitting next to each other, and that they had a sort of bonding that they could talk about that day with much greater memory than, of course, we could. And so it's a great bond that you and I have, that we were born together, that we were born at the same time in different parts during that crisis. But I think for our mothers, I think it was a really special moment. I felt like my mother was especially moved by the fact that she could sit next to your mother and look at us graduating and think that it was 21 years ago that they were giving birth to us, and they didn't know then what would become of these little babies. And it was an amazing thing for my mom, at least, to imagine that there they are now, these two women brought together by our graduation, and that they shared that crisis together in different places. It's really, really a powerful thing for my mom, having lived through it, of course, with the memory and the horror of such a crisis, and that you wonder. I think it must be terribly scary to be having a baby when it looks like the world is about to fall apart.
My fellow citizens, I want to take this opportunity to report on the conclusions which this government has reached on the basis of yesterday's aerial photographs, which will be made available tomorrow, as well as other indications, namely that the Soviet missile bases in Cuba are being dismantled, their missiles and related equipment are being crated, and the fixed installations at these sites are being destroyed.
Well, the most interesting part of this all is that Cuba today is a little more open than it was. I would love to be able to go to Cuba at will, and the fact that we have to go through another country to visit Cuba is shocking, and I wish President Obama would open the doors to Cuba so we would have better communication between the two countries. After 50 years, it's enough already.